Regrettably, I'm about to cause trouble. Written and narrated by Amie McNee. Chapter 9. Morning 4 at the apothecary. It was daybreak. I picked at the crumbling stone wall by my bed, irritated. I could hardly breathe. I was getting consistent pain in my ribs now from the reed ribbing of my kirtle digging into my lungs. I also didn't smell like roses. I was used to smelling like roses. That or lavender. I would put it in my baths and the scent would linger on my skin. 4 days in heavy dresses in the hot final days of summer had done something about that. I had tried to get out of my dresses, but I had chosen to wear one that laced at the back. I really hated myself for that. Today I was going to have to ask Hildy to help me out. She would only need to help me with the kirtle, which meant nothing needed to be revealed. Still, it made me sick with nerves. I crept downstairs. I wanted to get Hildy on her own. No doubt, Zita would have something abhorrent to say about it. I was hoping to catch her as she went about the garden, collecting herbs for her tinctures. Sure enough, there she was, bustling around in the early morning sun. She was humming to herself. I wondered why she did that when she couldn't hear her own song. "Hildy," I whispered, moving into the garden. Her eyes were focused on the herbs. I didn't want to frighten her, but I was unsure of how to get her attention. I waved my hands. Nothing. In situations like these, you have to approach her slowly and touch her gently on the arm. Zita was in the doorway watching Hildy. Her bright blue eyes seemed almost kind, but then they snapped back to me. "But you will not disturb her. This is a sacred time for Hildy. This is part of her divine practice." She moved towards me. "You're filthy, Maude." She spun me around and began tugging at the string of my kirtle. "I don't need your help." I tried to shoo her away, but she held me still. "I need help. I cannot be around you for another day with that smell. You will take a bath this morning too." I really did want a bath. I wonder if Hildy would give me lavender from her garden. "Is it somewhere private?" I asked. "It's just there." She pointed to a tub resting against the back wall of the apothecary. "Why?" I asked, mortified. "We heat the water over the fire in there," she gestured towards the kitchen, "and then we bathe in the garden. It's nice in the summer," she assured me. "In winter it's a little so-so. Put your hands over your head." I did as I was told, and felt a great deal of relief having the heavy thing removed. I cannot bathe outside. "Why not?" "It is ungodly. People will see my nakedness." "No one is interested in your nakedness, Maude." I wish that was true with my whole Maude heart. I put my arms around my tummy. I was completely covered, but I could feel a breeze around my midriff. I hardly liked the wind to touch my tarnished skin, let alone have the whole of Watlington see my mark. "You don't understand." I tugged my kirtle out of her grasp and went inside. I sat at the bottom of the stairs and stared at the flagstones. I should be with my husband, with my new household, in my new dresses. I should be telling my servants to fill my bath, to bring me the soaps and perfumes, to brush my hair and prepare my jewels. Instead, I was a runaway, sitting in a witch's cave in my underclothes, staring at the floor. Fuck it. I would just make myself some sort of rose-smelling perfume and rub it all over my body. I didn't need a bath. I looked up. Both witches were in the kitchen. "I need help." The words tasted sour in my mouth. "I'm sure you can fill your own bath." "I'm not talking about that, Zita. I need parchment to write a letter to my parents. I won't trouble you much longer. I must reach out to them and tell them they need to take me back." "Parchment?" Hildy confirmed with a hand signal. I nodded. "I have a small piece you can use. I also need some plain clothes to wear for the next few days. We have that too. I will give you payment in one of my earrings." "We don't want your earrings, Maude," said Zita. "We want you to bathe." "I won't bathe outside." "Most High Lord and Lady Shaftsberry, hitherto I have not wished to let you know of my affairs here, but it will be obvious to you that I have run away and was not delivered to Mr. John Smith safely. John the groom is not to be blamed, as he did not know of my schemes. I am unharmed, but each day my troubles increase. You must find an alternate path for me, or else I will never reveal my hidden place, and I may even cause you some trouble. You do not want people knowing about this unseemly situation. You will send word of my annulment or divorce, and your plans to retrieve me by sending word to the Watlington town bellman, and I will seek him out and retrieve the message. For my part, I pardon you of everything, and I wish to devoutly pray to God that he will pardon you also. Lady Maude Shaftsberry. I hadn't actually pardoned them of anything, but I thought it would be good if I looked forgiving. That would be godly. I also did not know of the farmer's name, but I supposed his name was probably John, and it seemed likely he had a poor and boring family name like Smith. If I was wrong, they would know who I spoke of. I had given it to Hildy to find a messenger not an hour earlier, and I was already anxious to go and find the town crier to see if there had been a response. But Hildy wasn't even home yet. I sat behind the counter, too nervous to sew. I played with the hem of my new apron. I was wearing Zita's clothes. They were light and didn't restrict me. I wouldn't tell her, of course, but it was comfortable. She had made me pour a floral oil all over me before I was allowed to wear them, muttering something mean about my noble stench. I wasn't upset about it. I might not have actually been clean, but I smelt divine. 2 hours later, Hildy still wasn't home. I was passing time by flicking bits of straw off the counter for Jimmy to catch. Jimmy's presence really gave this place a sense of witchy authenticity. They should be thankful I came to stay. The door opened, finally. "Hildy!" She smiled at me. "Is Zita with a client?" "Yes, did you get the letter sent?" "You must speak slower for me, Maude." "Surely you know what I'm asking," I said slowly, annoyed. She smiled. "A traveller coming through town said he will deliver it. He didn't know who I was, so I don't think it will be traced back." I breathed a huge sigh of relief. "Thank you, Hildy." She touched her chin. "This is how you can thank me with your hands." I copied the gesture. She winked at me. I smiled. It felt good taking action and sending the letter. I wasn't a pawn to be played off. I was Maude, maker of my own destiny. Day 9 in the apothecary. I came out of my room, Jimmy under my arm, my pearl earrings tangled in my hair, reminding me of who I was. I had slept well, despite the fact I had no bed curtains and my mattress was a few inches away from the floor. I was surprised my eyes hadn't been eaten out by rats. I suppose Jimmy was to thank for that. My ward. "Your imp," said Edward, who lived in my mind. I leant against the railing of the stairs and stretched. Surely Hildy would have got the morning bread by now. I was starving. If I had become Lady Beckett, I would have made breaking of the fast formal, in the Great Hall, with lots of food. Not just bread, butter, and a bit of sage. I fancied a cup of that peppermint tisane, but I'd never had to put the pot on the fire before. I didn't want to get my white nightgown dirty, and I was afraid of burning, or God forbid, blackening my hands. My tummy grumbled uncomfortably. I had gone to see the town crier every day since I had sent the letter. Yesterday, I had only to appear across the square and he had shaken his head. I was expecting action. I thought I was a liability, something to worry about. They surely didn't want their only daughter wandering the streets at night. I could be killed. But I had not heard a peep. Mother would have read it, of course. She was only a half-hour's walk away. She could have sent 100 letters in the time that had gone by. Unless the traveller had got confused and taken it to someone else. Oh, how I hated that traveller. No one was in the kitchen. I went to check the apothecary. It wouldn't be open yet, but I had heard them clinking away with bottles and the herbs hours before dawn. Did the witches never sleep? I pressed my ear against each of their locked offices. No noise from within. I actually stomped my foot. Hunger did not bring out the best in me. I sat on the small window seat, tucking my knees into my chest, staring out at the street, absent-mindedly watching people go by, hidden in the shadows. When they came home, I was going to say to them, "Isn't there a spell to make bread at home? Or perhaps, wouldn't flying be quicker?" I practiced the jeering look that would accompany my witty attack. My tummy grumbled louder than ever. There they were, hand in hand, pottering down Sheep Street. God damn it, they were dawdling. I saw my bread under Hildy's arm. I stood up and patted my curls down, pulling my cap tightly around my head. My hair had got bushier since arriving at the witch's den. It was wilder and harder to tame. I needed someone to brush and oil it. The door clicked open and their shop bell rang. The noise sent a shiver down my spine. "Good morning, Maude." Zita smiled joyfully. Hildy made a half-circle wave I recognized as her good morning symbol. I returned it unthinkingly. Then, remembering my anger, I opened my mouth ready to spit my prepared poison. "I see you've met the fairy," Zita said before I could speak. I looked at her, confused. She gestured behind me. I turned around. A very, very tall, very black man was sitting behind the counter. "Jesus Christ!" I blasphemed, leaping behind the witches. "Maude, this is the fairy. Hildy and I captured him this morning. Fairy, this is Maude. Zita said something to Hildy with her hands. The sign for fairy appeared to be the linking of thumbs and the twiddling of fingers. Have you been here the whole time? I was clutching my chest, still hiding behind Hildy. I was in my nightclothes. My hair was only just under my cap. This was bloody indecent. The man nodded. How did I not see you? Because he is a fairy, Zita explained. The big black fairy just stared at me with his bright eyes. Had he been watching me all morning? What do you mean he is a fairy? I asked, preparing myself for some witchy bullshit. Sign as best as you can so Hildy knows what you're saying, Maude. I sighed, moved out from behind Hildy, and made an angry, questioning gesture with my hands, and then pointed at the big black man in our house. We caught him, Hildy explained. We put out a fairy trap last night, the usual fairy trap. Bread, milk, custard. We laid it at the wood's end, and we found him in the early hours eating it. And that makes him a fairy. I tried to sign my sentence, but Hildy didn't understand. Zita answered, Yes, we laid a fairy trap and we caught a fairy. He doesn't look like a fairy. I made a cross sign with my arms, pointed to my eyes, and then joined thumbs and twiddled my fingers. All fairies look different. What matters is we caught him, and now he will help us around the house, like all good sprites. In return for custard, interrupted the fairy. His voice was deep, calm. He seemed mildly amused. Yes, you reach our top shelves and we give you custard, Zita smiled. What is your name? I asked cautiously. Something devious and curious, no doubt, Zita predicted. My name is Rufus. Oh, very devious, Hildy muttered. Had she even understood what he said? Or was she just playing with me? Are you a fairy, Rufus? I asked. He glanced at the witches. He was far too big to be this shy. His head touched the ceiling. He had to bend himself down to stand. His silence spoke for itself. I thought not. Zita tutted. You can deny your true nature all you want, fairy. We know the truth. Honestly, it was like living with children. Where do you come from? I asked. He could be a rapist or a Catholic for all anyone knew. The fairy queen, Hildy answered for him. This would get us nowhere. Can you go cut the bread, Hildy? I'm starving, and I've been waiting to eat for hours and hours. Isn't there a spell to make bread from home? I raised an eyebrow. Excellent delivery, Maude. Yes, but only witches can eat it, Zita hissed, taking Hildy by the hand and going out the back, leaving me with the big, scary fairy. Rufus, where did you come from? I asked again, covering my stomach. This was a very flimsy gown. He looked reluctant. Did you eat the fairy bait? He held his chin high and then brought it down in a firm nod. Yes. I waited to see if he would say anything more. He didn't. Are you someone's servant? I asked. No reply. Have you run away? I'm here now. His voice was deep, reassuring and sonorous. I will help the wise women. I'll get things off top shelves, do fairy things. But you're not a fairy. He shrugged again, lifting those big shoulders up and down. Are you a witch? He asked. Certainly not, I snapped. He chuckled softly. Do you know a lot of Hildy's hand language? He asked. I know a bit. He moved from behind the counter. I took several steps back, but he wasn't interested in me. He was looking at the bottles of potions and remedies. I will teach you the signs if you are to stay. He smiled and took a bottle of lavender oil and smelt it. She can read your lips if you speak clearly. The gestures just make it a bit clearer. Perhaps Rufus would go out early and get me bread for when I wake. Maybe he would make me porridge. This is such a nice smell, he remarked, surprised, restoppering the lavender oil. He would be my servant and my student. You should learn how to ask if Hildy needs help, I said clearly, imitating the voice of my old tutor. He put down the vial and turned to me, paying attention. To say I or me, you touch your chest. I demonstrated. Help is like this. I gestured passing something to him with my hand. He repeated it easily. Do both signs with a questioning face. She'll get what you mean. I hadn't exactly missed my younger brothers, but I had missed my older sister voice. I had missed bossing people around. Rufus nodded and went to investigate the not-so-great hall. As he disappeared, the doorbell jingled. We are not open, I yelped, hastily following him into the back. I needed to get some fucking clothes on. I sat at the tiny wooden table. The back door was open onto the garden and the fields beyond. A cow grazed nearby, as though to eavesdrop on me. But I wasn't saying anything. I just tore at my bread and butter. Not even any sage today. You eat like a wolf, Rufus noted, sitting opposite me. Slowly, I looked up. His eyebrows were raised, probably anticipating a verbal beating from the look on my face. Zita! I yelled. Rufus jumped. I got up, chewing viciously. I found her in the front of the shop. Maude. She was stewing something in the fireplace behind the counter. What role does this fairy play in this house? Is he beneath me? She stood up slowly. The pot bubbled dangerously, not quite unlike my temperament. What role does he play? That is a good question, Maude. I squinted at her. She put her hands on her very slight waist and looked beyond me. From what I can tell, he's a guardian spirit. That's why he's used to this domestic home and why he'll be useful around the apothecary. But I could be wrong. If he is a trooper sprite, we will know soon enough. He'll have stolen our drink and bewitched us all to dance. Have you felt the sudden, unprovoked urge to do the Volta, Maude? I made a dismissive noise, but she ignored me. If you are asking me whether he is beneath you, in a courtly manner, in a Sherburne Castle manner, if you are asking me whether he is less than you because he is magical and dark of skin, then no. She looked down her long, pointed nose. IW of equal status. There is no difference between witches and fairies. We will treat each other equally. I am a lord's daughter, and that man is a vagabond. I had whispered it. Zita stared at me, her lip curled. I think you should take that back, said Hildy, exiting her room. She had not even been in the apothecary when I had spoken, so how had she heard? How did you know what I said? I snapped accusatorily. She saw the prejudice pouring out your eyeballs. Zita's own eyes were dark, flickering with firelight. Hildy made a humph noise in agreement. Spotted, toaded witches.